Hey everybody, it's Ron from Pick Dawgz, and this is Ron's Rundown. We're going to go over the MLB games scheduled for Wednesday, June 22nd, 2022. Now, if you like what you see, make sure to give this video a big thumbs up and subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to put your baseball picks in the comment section below. Now, if you're looking for my best bets, you can find those at the Premium Picks tab at Pickdawgz.com. I'm running a daily $15 MLB best bet, so check it out at Pick Dawgz Premium. Alrighty, here we go. Here are the games for Wednesday, June 22nd. First up, we see the New York Mets taking on the Houston Astros. Carlos Carrasco and Luis Garcia are your starters for this one. Now, these have been two starting pitchers that have been a little bit difficult to read as of late. Luis Garcia really struggled against the Marlins back on June the 10th, where he gave up 5 earned and 3 home runs and only 4 1/3 innings pitched in a 7-4 Astros loss. But then he bounced back in a big way against the Rangers, 6 innings, 1 earned run, 9 strikeouts. That was a 9-2 Astros win. So I do think Garcia is in a little bit better form when you look at Carrasco in his last 11 innings, which is his last 2 outings, giving up 17 hits, 8 earned runs, 3 home runs. So the walks, home runs, and base hits starting to show up a little bit more for Carrasco. The strikeouts have been there for him, but the same thing can be said about Luis Garcia. So this is a really tough game, in my opinion, in terms of starting pitching. I think both of these teams have really good lineups, really good bullpens as well. But I'm going to give the edge to the home team with the starting pitcher that I think is in a little bit better form in the Houston Astros, but not a game I'm rushing to bet. In our next game, we see the Toronto Blue Jays taking on the Chicago White Sox. We're going to see Ross Stripling and Lucas Giolito on the mound for this one. Now, similar to what I've said about Kevin Gausman in his last couple starts, I think Lucas Giolito is not pitching the same. I mean, it's pretty clear at this point with his 4.78 ERA, but just something in his mechanics is not the same. He's giving up a ton of home runs, a ton of walks, and the strikeouts haven't always been there. His last outing against the Astros, he only had 3 strikeouts in 5 innings, giving up 7 hits, 8 earned runs, 2 home runs, 3 walks. That was a 13-3 blowout loss for the White Sox in that one. And the Toronto Blue Jays have been very good against right-handed pitching as of late. In fact, in the last month or so, they're number 2 in baseball in team OPS against righties, and they're number 3 in baseball in isolated power against righties, while the White Sox are not even close to those numbers against righties. We've mentioned that all season long. In the last 30 days, they're 29th in the league in isolated power against righties. And team OPS a little bit better at 18th, but not good enough for me. And, Ross Stripling, although he's not going to be able to pitch too deep into this game, in the innings he's pitched this season, he's been solid, 3.28 ERA. I'd like to see the strikeout numbers rise, but he's limiting home runs, he's limiting walks, and I think he's good enough here on the road for the Blue Jays bats to back him up. So I'm going to take Toronto here on the money line. Next up, we see the Texas Rangers hosting the Philadelphia Phillies. A pair of right-handed starters in Zach Wheeler and John Gray are your projected pitchers for this one. Now, John Gray, it looks like the numbers are trending in his favor. When you look at his numbers, 9.61 strikeouts per 9, so he's getting a good K rate. He's limiting home runs to .76 home runs per 9. So he's got that 4.27 ERA, but an even better 3.36 FIP and a 3.60 xFIP. He's facing a Phillies lineup that it's questionable whether we're going to see Bryce Harper get back in the lineup for this game. He's missed the last few games with a blister that turned into an infection. He hasn't been able to swing a bat, and because of that, he's had to miss some games. But, this Phillies lineup, although they are very talented even without Harper, we know that the lineup's even better when they have the reigning MVP in there. So without Harper, I'm not sure this Phillies lineup packs that same punch, especially against right-handed pitching, where the Phillies have definitely done a better job against lefties than righties. So with John Gray pitching well, the Phillies lineup may or may not having Bryce Harper, I do think there's going to be a lower scoring game, because when you look on the other side, Zach Wheeler pitching really well for the Phillies this season, and I've mentioned in previous videos, the Rangers have not hit right-handed pitching very well at all this year. Near the bottom in many important stats, hitting-wise, team OPS, and isolated power. Against lefties, it's a different story for Texas, but against righties, they haven't really figured it out. And Zach Wheeler, his last 2 outings combined 13 innings, 6 hits, 1 earned run, and 11 strikeouts. No walks in that stretch, so he is pitching really well for Philadelphia. I see a low-scoring game in this one. I lean towards the Phillies in terms of the outright winner, but I think the under is the better play. Next up, we see the Arizona Diamondbacks taking on the San Diego Padres. Madison Bumgarner and Mike Clevenger are your starters for this one. And to me, this Arizona Diamondbacks lineup is just too home run dependent for me to take a chance with them here, especially with Bumgarner on the mound. I do think Bumgarner is the weakest link in this Diamondbacks rotation, although he has a solid ERA at 3.45, his whip's a little high at 1.32. The home runs are being an issue lately. He's given up at least 1 home run in 4 of his last 5 starts, and the strikeouts haven't been there for him. Only 48 Ks in 70 1/3 innings this season. coming off a decent start against the Twins where he did get the win and he went 6 innings, only giving up 2 earned runs, but he gave up a home run in that one, only had 3 strikeouts, gave up 9 base hits, so a lot of traffic on the base pads. And I think the Padres are the type of team to take advantage of that. And you look at Mike Clevenger, he hasn't really had too much work this season. He did have a spot out of the bullpen last time out where he struggled, but that was at Coors Field against a much tougher Rockies lineup, in my opinion. I think in this spot, with the Padres having such a strong bullpen as well, to me, it's San Diego or pass for this one. So give me San Diego on the money line. Next up, we see the Miami Marlins taking on the Colorado Rockies. We're going to see Chad Cole and Pablo Lopez as your starters for this one. Now, I know Pablo Lopez has seen better days, and his last few starts hasn't been the most effective, but he's still striking out batters at a good rate, and I do think this particular matchup benefits him pretty well when you're going up against a Rockies lineup that hasn't done much against righties at all in the last month or so, and all season long in general, but especially on the road. When they're away from Coors Field, this Rockies lineup really struggles against right-handed pitching. I think this is going to be a really good bounce-back spot for Pablo Lopez, and he's facing Chad Cole, a guy that I do think is also going to regress this season. 3.69 ERA. I don't think it's going to last. When you look at his 1.42 whip, it's very, very high whip. The walks are being an issue. Lately, he's giving up 7 walks in his last 9 1/3 innings. The earned runs in his last 9 1/3 innings also high at 7 earned runs. The base hits are piling up. He doesn't strike out a lot of batters. And the Marlins are a strong lineup against right-handed pitching, both team OPS and isolated power-wise. I like this spot for Miami. I'm going to take them on the money line and sprinkle a little bit on the run line as well. Next up, we see the Los Angeles Dodgers taking on the Cincinnati Reds. Tyler Anderson and Luis Castillo on the mound for this contest. Now, this is an interesting game. When you look at Tyler Anderson's last 5 starts, I think he's benefited from some pretty weak matchups overall. Last time out, he went against the Angels, and he had that no-hitter going for quite some time. He ended his line 8 1/3 innings, 1 earned run, 8 strikeouts. And I got to say, he is pitching very well this season. But in his last 5 outings, we see the Angels, one of the worst lineups in the last 30 days against left-handed pitching. The New York Mets, a lineup that we've mentioned over and over on this show, has really struggled against lefties. Hasn't been the case against righties, but haven't done great against lefties. Then you see them pitch against the Diamondbacks, a lineup that hasn't done much against righties or lefties overall. The Nationals, another weak lineup. And the one outlier in that last 5 games is the Chicago White Sox, which we know is one of the top lineups in baseball against lefties. And in that start, we saw Tyler Anderson struggle quite a bit. 3 innings, 4 earned runs in that one. Wasn't able to pitch deep in that ballgame, and although the Dodgers came back and won that game, I don't really trust Tyler Anderson in this spot against the Cincinnati Reds lineup that obviously has its best numbers at home, but overall in the last 30 days is top 5 in baseball in team OPS against lefties and isolated power against lefties. And in terms of WRC+, they're ranked 5th in baseball as well. So I like the Reds at home here to get on the board early on Tyler Anderson. We know this Dodgers lineup hasn't looked the same in the past month either, and with the Cincinnati Reds giving their best starter or one of their top, I would say Luis Castillo and Tyler Mahle are their top 2 options. I think Cincinnati competes in this game. I'm going to take the Reds here on the run line, getting the 1.5 runs. Next up, we see the New York Yankees taking on the Tampa Bay Rays. Jordan Montgomery and Shane Baz are your starters for this one. Now, we saw a really nice bounce-back start from Shane Baz in his last outing against the Orioles. Against the Twins, he wasn't able to get out of the 3rd inning, giving up 5 earned runs in that one. But against the Orioles, 6 innings, 7 strikeouts, no earned runs, no walks. Very impressive from the youngster. But I don't love this spot for him against the Yankees, the Bombers, one of the best lineups in baseball against right-handed pitching. Now, I've mentioned that the Yankees do struggle against lefties in terms of the strikeout department. They strike out quite a bit against left-handed pitching, and we saw them, even when McClanahan wasn't his best, he still had 8 strikeouts in that game last time out. But the Yankees against righties, a completely different story. They don't strike out very much against right-handed pitching, and with Shane Baz not being able to get those strikeouts, I do think he's going to struggle here, especially when he's up against Jordan Montgomery, a guy who's been Mr. Consistent. I mean, you want to talk about consistent starting pitching. He's gone out there. He gives the Yankees a chance to win every time he's on the mound. He doesn't have the best record, a 3-1 record, but he's given up 2 earned runs or fewer in almost every start this season. That's what you want from your starting pitcher. He can go out there, get you 6-7 innings. And the Tampa Bay Rays lineup has not been very good at all in the last month or so. A lot of that's been dealt with because of injuries to guys like Franco and Lau, but even still, I just can't take the Rays in this number. I think the Yankees have all the value on them. Give me the New York Yankees on the money line. Next up, we see the Chicago Cubs taking on the Pittsburgh Pirates. And we're going to see Keegan Thompson and Jared Eichhoff in this one. And Jared Eichhoff or Eichhoff, oh man, I don't trust him in this spot. this is going to be his season debut for the Pirates. He was on the Mets and the Phillies in previous spots in his career, and it just hasn't worked out in the major leagues. And really, this season, it hasn't really worked out in the minor leagues either, giving up a good amount of home runs, not really striking out a ton of guys for minor league numbers. And, his 2021 stats at 8.69 ERA, 2.03 whip. And he's going up against Keegan Thompson, who I know a lot of you have a mixed relationship or a love-hate relationship with right now, as at times you've backed him and he really struggled, like in that start against the Orioles. But last time out against the Atlanta Braves, one of the hottest lineups in baseball, Keegan Thompson went at Wrigley Field, 6 innings, no earned runs, 9 strikeouts, 2 hits allowed in a 1-0 Cubs win. He was very solid in that game. I think against a pretty weak Pirates lineup, he's good enough here for the bats to back him up against Eichhoff. So give me the Chicago Cubs here on the money line. Next up, we see the Washington Nationals taking on the Baltimore Orioles. Patrick Corbin and Tyler Wells are your starters for this one. Now, at the beginning of the season, I would be a little bit hesitant to take the Orioles in this spot because I've mentioned that they really haven't done much against lefties overall this year. But as of late, that's starting to change for Baltimore. In the last 30 days, they're number 15 in baseball in team OPS against lefties. So a little bit better there, but even better in isolated power, where they're ranked 12th overall in the last 30 days. So they're getting some offensive numbers against lefties. Patrick Corbin has really struggled this season. Even last time out, where he only gave up 2 earned runs, he still gave up 9 total runs as 7 unearned runs were allowed by him. The defense didn't help him out, but he still gave up 8 base hits in that game, only 2 strikeouts. So he really didn't deserve to have a great outing either. And he's given up at least 3 earned runs in each of his last 5 starts. Tyler Wells, although I do have my worries about his game with the fact that he doesn't strike out a ton of guys, I still think he's good enough to keep the ball in the yard. The Nationals' offense hasn't been very good against righties this season, and at home, I like his chances here. So give me the Orioles here on the money line. Next up, we see the Detroit Tigers taking on the Boston Red Sox. Tarek Skubal and Michael Wacha are your starters for this one. Now, there's no doubt in my mind that I trust Tarek Skubal more than I do Michael Wacha in terms of starting pitching. But there's also no doubt in my mind that I do not trust this Detroit Tigers lineup to do anything right now, especially against right-handed pitching. And the Boston Red Sox lineup has been one of the best in baseball against lefties in the last 30 days, where they're number 3 in baseball in isolated power against lefties and number 4 in team OPS against lefties. And Tarek Skubal hasn't been the same. I will say, although I trust him a little bit more than Wacha, he hasn't been the same as of late, giving up 3 earned runs or more in 4 of his last 5 outings. Home runs in each of his last 3 outings. The walks are starting to be an issue for him. The base hits are starting to pile up. Going up against a tough Red Sox lineup at Fenway Park isn't usually the remedy for that for a struggling pitcher and a team that's not really going to back you up offensively and has been so bad on the road this season. This is a bad spot for Skubal, and even though Wacha might get lucky yet again, we'll get back to him when he starts to regress later on this season. Don't you worry. But for now, I'll back Wacha and the Red Sox here on the money line. Next up, we see the San Francisco Giants taking on the Atlanta Braves. Carlos Rodon and Charlie Morton are your starters for this one. Now, there's no doubt in my mind, just like the last game I went over, I think Carlos Rodon is the better option on the mound in terms of starting pitching. But I will say, this Atlanta Braves lineup has absolutely demolished left-handed pitching as of late. It's not even close where their numbers are. They're number 1 in baseball by a mile in isolated power against lefties. Number 2, just second to the Blue Jays in team OPS against lefties. Carlos Rodon's been sharp in his last 2 outings, but I think it's going to be a really tough spot for him on the road against the defending World Series champs. I've mentioned what they've done offensively against lefties. And Charlie Morton, although he really struggled at the beginning of the season, his numbers are still not great overall. We're starting to see him sharpen it up. In his last 13 innings, he's had 21 strikeouts, so he's missing some more bats. He's limiting walks, only 1 walk allowed in his last 2 outings. And I like him in this spot against the Giants. Give me the Atlanta Braves here at a really good price on the money line. Next up, we see the Cleveland Guardians taking on the Minnesota Twins. Tristan McKenzie and Sonny Gray are your starters for this one. Now, I do think I'm going to take a different route for this game than I usually do when it comes to a pick. I'm going to take the Minnesota Twins team total over. Now, we're going to have to wait and see till the morning of these games to see what exactly number we're going to get. But right now, the total is set at 8.5. So you can expect the team total is probably going to be around 4.5 for the Twins. I like it over there. I see the Twins scoring 6+ runs in this game. When you look at their matchup against McKenzie's got a 2.96 ERA, having the best start to a season that he's had in his major league career thus far. That's great and all, but I do see some worry signs. The 4.37 FIP, the 4.45 xFIP. He's in the bottom 14th percentile in average exit velocity, bottom 32nd percentile in hard hit percentage, bottom 23rd percentile in barrel percentage. He's only got a 7.84 Ks per 9 rating, so he's not striking out a ton of guys. The 1.41 home runs per 9 rating is high, but I think it has even more room to grow, as his home run to fly ball ratio is only at 10.8%, and his career average around 13.6%. So I see even more home runs being allowed by McKenzie when you add the fact to his barrel percentage, hard hit percentage, average exit velocity. You're going up against the Minnesota Twins lineup that is very, very powerful against right-handed pitching, especially in the last month. And you're playing in a field in Minneapolis that has been getting hotter and hotter. The warmer weather is helping the ball fly, and the wind has been blowing out into center field the last couple of days. We'll have to see what the wind weather's looking like for tomorrow's game, but I think this is a putrid spot for McKenzie against a really tough Twins lineup. I like the over in this game overall, but I especially like the Twins team total over in this spot. Next up, we see the St. Louis Cardinals taking on the Milwaukee Brewers. Adam Wainwright and Eric Lauer are your starters here. Now, it's not very often you're going to see me fade the Cardinals when they're facing a left-handed pitcher, especially at the price that we're getting them here. But the Cardinals offensively haven't been the same against lefties that they were in the beginning of the season. When you look at the last 30 days, Cardinals are ranked 19th, so outside the top 15 in baseball in team OPS against lefties. And even worse, they're bottom 5 in the league in isolated power, ranked 27th in the league in isolated power against left-handed pitching. And if you're not a very powerful lineup, that definitely helps Eric Lauer's chances, as he's basically a power pitcher. He's going to get you strikeouts. He's got 72 Ks in 68 innings, but he's susceptible to the home run ball. We've seen him give up at least 3 home runs in each of his last 2 starts. So if St. Louis is not putting up those power numbers that we're used to seeing from against lefties, I don't think they're going to be able to get the job done. We saw Lauer pitch very well against St. Louis back on May 26th, which does take into account the last 30 days, as that was a little bit less than 30 days ago. So May 26th, Lauer, 5 innings, 2 earned runs, no home runs. That's the big point right there. And that was a 4-3 Milwaukee victory there. Adam Wainwright, I still think, has a ton of regression in his game to worry about. We're starting to see it, as his last outing gave up 4 earned runs against the Red Sox. I like the Brewers here on the money line at home. Next up, we see the Seattle Mariners taking on the Oakland Athletics. George Kirby and Paul Blackburn are your starters here. I'm going to keep this one short and simple. Although I don't really trust George Kirby on the mound, I also do see some worry signs with Paul Blackburn's game. And I think with both pitchers having some regression to worry about, I think the Mariners have the much better bullpen, the much better lineup overall against right-handed pitching. And for that reason, I got to take the Seattle Mariners here. I'm not going to be cute and take the underdog. Although I could see Oakland having some success offensively, I also think the Mariners are going to compete in this game offensively themselves. And if it is a tight game late, I trust the Seattle Mariners bullpen a lot more than Oakland's right now. And the Oakland A's have been one of the worst teams in baseball at home this season. Give me the Seattle Mariners here on the money line, but not my favorite game on the board. In our final game of the night, we see the Kansas City Royals taking on the Los Angeles Angels. Daniel Lynch and Shohei Ohtani are your starters for this one. Now, because Ohtani's on the mound facing one of the worst records in baseball in the Kansas City Royals, we see the Angels as big time favorites at minus 200 in this one. And although I think the Angels have a good shot at winning this game, there is just no value on the board for me in this spot. But I do like the under in this game. You know, Shohei Ohtani's been a solid pitcher on the mound this year with his 3.28 ERA, and the Kansas City Royals, in terms of run scoring, haven't been very good this season. So I could see Ohtani keeping the Royals bats down. But when you look at Daniel Lynch, last time out, very sharp against the A's, 5 innings, 1 earned run, 10 strikeouts. And the Angels overall this season, or I should say in the last 30 days this season, they have really struggled against left-handed pitching. They're 29th in the league in team OPS against lefties in the last 30 days, 26th in isolated power against lefties in that stretch as well. They're striking out a ton against left-handed pitching as well, in the top 10 in strikeout percentage. So Daniel Lynch, a guy who's had 17 Ks in his last 10 and a third innings, that bodes pretty well for him facing a struggling Angels lineup against left-handed pitching. I think this is going to be a low-scoring game, so I wouldn't want to lay a run line. It's just, if runs are hard to come by, I wouldn't want to lay 1.5 at home. So I'm going to take the under in the Royals-Angels to close out the night. And that's it. Those are the games for Wednesday, June 22nd. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe. And don't forget to put your baseball picks in the comment section below. Again, if you're looking for my best bets, you can find those at Pick Dawgz Premium. As always, this is Ron Romanelli. Good luck.